The next property is x and y intercepts. So we're going to take a look at a few of these and try to find the x and y intercepts. So if I'm going to find an x-intercept or a y, I'll do the y-intercept first because that's easier. And we'll take a look at number, we'll just do 20. Doesn't really matter. We'll do 20. So what we're looking for is where my x equals 0 if it's a y-intercept. So that means all I have to do here is I have my f of x. Actually, I'm just looking at f of 0. My x is 0. So that's 0 plus 5 over 0 squared plus 4. So that's going to be 5/4. So my y-intercept is 0, 5/4. That's easy enough. Let's try a more fancy one now for that y-intercept. We'll try number 23. We'll write both those down here. So 23. So for that one, I just plug in 0 for my x. So it doesn't matter how complicated it looks. That's just going to be 0 squared plus 0 plus 6 over 0 squared minus 10 times 0 plus 24. And we see that we're going to get 6 over 24, which is 1/4. So my y-intercept is going to be 0, 1/4. So that's the first part of this. Now let's find the x-intercepts. This is where it gets a little more interesting. So the first thing I have to do is factor the top and the bottom. So I make sure something doesn't cancel out so we don't have any issues with zeros in the bottom for the top. Okay, so when I look at this, the bottom doesn't factor for number 20. X squared plus 4 is prime with real numbers. And then x plus 5 in the top. I just really care where that's 0. So since I couldn't factor the bottom, I got to take it all or leave it all. So now, for an x-intercept, that's where my y equals 0. So what does that mean here? My y is actually my f of x. So really, I'm saying 0 equals x plus 5 over x squared plus 4. And I can say definitely that when the top is 0, the bottom is not going to be 0. So all I have to find out when I'm dealing with these rational functions, as long as we don't have any simplification here using algebra, we can simply just set the top equal to 0. And then my x is going to be negative 5. So that tells me for my x-intercept, and I'm just going to get 1 here, it's going to be negative 5, 0. So there's my x-intercept of number 20 there. Now let's take a look at 23. Now what we're going to have to do here for number 23 is we're going to have to factor that top. Now the reason why we didn't have to deal with it for the first one, because the first one was a linear factor to begin with, or I can call it first degree polynomial. So those are easy to figure out what the value is. Now this for number 23 it gets a little bit more complicated. So I have to be able to factor both the top and the bottom. So I'm going to say, now I just kind of wrote them all out. The bottom factors real nicely, x minus 6, x minus 4. But the top, if you notice that, I can plug in 1 and 6, and these would both be pluses. And that would not give me 1x in the middle when I expanded it. So that tells me that that's not going to work. So now if I tried 2 and 3, that also isn't going to work because that's going to give me negative 2x, negative 3x, that's going to be negative 5x. So that doesn't work. So what that tells me here is it tells me this top is prime. So that means it doesn't factor. So therefore, for the top one, I'm not going to have an x-intercept. Now remember, that's where my rational expression is 0, and since the top is never going to be 0 because it's prime, then that tells me there that I don't have an x-intercept. So I can say no x-intercept. And that's enough, and that's sufficient for an answer. All right, so we just figured out the x and y intercepts of both of these. Now just remember, if I'm finding an x-intercept, that means my y is 0. If I'm finding a y-intercept, my x is 0. So those are big things to carry away from this video here.